I've been thinking a lot about the first person plural pronoun we, as in, this is not who we are. People are beginning to push back by responding with, this is who we are. I've said it myself in the past. This is precisely who we are. In his remarks following the massacre of 19 children and 2 adults in Texas, President Biden said, "Why are we willing to live with this carnage? Why do we keep letting this happen? Where in God's name is our backbone?" Fred Gutenberg said, "This was predictable and preventable, and the next one is predictable." And then, channeling our collective rage, he said, "We are fucking failing our children." I've got to be honest, this is beginning to feel almost ritualistic. The worst horror is inflicted, and we're shocked and devastated and enveloped by a wordless rage. But it all seems to be for nothing. The shock and horror and rage lead to nothing except the next inevitable horror that, yes, should be, in a sane country, preventable. But is it really we who are responsible? Are we willing to live with this carnage? We know that most of us are not. Most of us would go to great lengths to make sure this never happens again. Most of us would happily trade every last Republican who's willing to sacrifice our children on the altar of their grotesque ambitions for even one of those lives. Is this what America is? Emphatically, yes. This is where American exceptionalism has led us. This is what happens when you think you're so great, you don't need to make any effort to be good. This is the inevitable result of failing to fix the structural deficiencies built into the Constitution. This is what happens when we fail to recognize that the American system is really apartheid masquerading as democracy. While governors of red states refuse to allow teachers to teach an accurate version of American history because they say doing so might offend the sensibilities of white children, they choose to put all of our children in unfathomably dangerous situations that, as Fred Gutenberg pointed out, are entirely preventable. But they seem determined to place our children in even greater danger. As a way of dealing with the mass slaughters, they're happy to oversee the governor and attorney general of Texas want to arm teachers. They will not be the last white men in power to present this as a serious measure. Imagine, though, for a second, what kind of insecure macho vigilantes are going to apply for that job. Imagine the lessons they will teach our children, in addition to the lesson they are already being taught, that they are expendable, that their mental health, their well-being, and their lives really don't matter after all. But let's stop saying we and us, okay? It's them. It's these power-hungry murderers who care no more about our actual living, beautiful, wondrous children than they do about the goddamn clump of cells they pretend to revere. And it is we, those of us who value life, who would do anything to keep our children safe and create a world in which they can thrive and even survive until adulthood, who need to hang these murders around the Republicans' necks and let the blood of our children, who are dead as a direct result of their willful inaction, stain them forever. It is such a thrill for me to have as my guest tonight the renowned author of several international bestsellers, most recently City on Fire, which is also a New York Times bestseller, and which thankfully is the first in a trilogy, but also creator of masterful viral political videos, which to date have had over 250 million views. Don Winslow, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for all the support. I really appreciate it. It's meant a lot.
Well, you've been doing some of the best work out there in terms of helping people understand what we're facing, in terms of helping people personalize the threats we're facing. And you also, a lot of times you use humor, which is incredibly important. And one of the many things I wanted to talk to you about today was your recent announcement that you're retiring from writing to focus full time, basically on saving our democracy, um, which I can't think of a more noble, necessary cause. But how did you get to that point where you felt that it was just all hands on deck time?
It's been an evolution, you know. I've been doing these tweets, and Shane Salerno and I have been doing these videos now for I think about 5 years. I think you can figure out the math of that,
Yeah.
and it, they've had good effect.
Yeah.
I think we've achieved some things, and I'm proud of. We've had 250 million views of those videos, and which just shocks me, amazes me. And listen, I kind of thought after the 2020 election that it was over. I'm not really a political person, to tell you the truth. I'm a storyteller. That's what I do. But we're not out of the woods. I think the events of January 6th, among a lot of other things, but particularly that, showed us that we're nowhere near out of the woods. The lack of real response to it, the lack of consequences. Uh, and so I feel that we're at a sort of existential moment in American democracy, and have been for the past 5 years, but that's going to continue. And I thought that this is the time. I've written this trilogy. I've finished it. It's sort of the work of my lifetime, and now is the time to devote whatever talents I have, whatever platform I have, to this fight.
Well, I think you share with a lot of people the idea that Biden won. It's not going to get better overnight, but of course it's going to get better. And what I think has been unnerving for a lot of people is that it's actually worse now than it's ever been. And I think that does force people to reevaluate their relationship with democracy, actually. And in that regard, I think we're all political. If it's okay, I'd like to read a little bit from your statement, and then
Yeah, sure.
pick
Yeah,
up. You write,
yeah, yeah.
Trumpism is a cancer, and a more dangerous form of it will emerge after the November midterms. Then you say Democrats have better ideas, better candidates, and a better vision for tomorrow. What they don't have is better messaging. And I'm going to try to change that. And the other thing you say, which is so incredibly important, is that investigations aren't consequences. So let's start with messaging. As you say,
Mhm.
you are a storyteller, you're a master storyteller. And, anybody who's read your books can see that. Anybody who's watched your videos can see that. Why is it you think either that elected Democrats, Democratic leadership, can't figure out how to get out of their own way and craft a compelling narrative, considering we have everything good on our side, or find other people who can do it for them?
Well, look, I think we do have a great message, and we need not to be shy about getting it out. I think, for one thing, we've ceded far too much territory. We've ceded the definition of patriotism. If
Absolutely.
if you see that pickup truck come by, with the flag waving out the back, you know who that is. It's not Democrats, but that's my flag too. That's your flag too. That's also the flag of a Central American immigrant who's been here for 3 weeks. That's her flag too. So I think part of that messaging needs to be that we own patriotism as well on our side. We have those values. I'm sorry. Did I interrupt
No,
you?
I literally just had a similar conversation with somebody the other day about taking back certain words, taking back certain concepts, and patriotism, of course, is the top of the list. And what's really fascinating is how uncomfortable that makes some of us on the left because of what Republicans have done
Right, but
by waving
we
the
can't be
flag.
uncomfortable. Right, but
Right.
we can't be uncomfortable anymore. Let's remember the other flag they waved in the attack on the
Yeah.
Capitol, that had the image of a wannabe dictator emblazoned on our flag. And I know that's a bit close to the bone to you. I don't want to be offensive, but that's not patriotism. That's the opposite of it. And so, again, I think sometimes we're too soft. we're too reticent. We want to be too polite. We want the KPBS, license plate frame around us on the Prius, and we need to be tougher. We need to be stronger than we've been. The other thing that we've ceded, I think, is the idea of morality. Sexual morality, all kinds of morality. We have surrendered the definition of that to the right wing and to the fundamentalists. We've allowed a man, and again, I apologize, who
Can I just really
about,
quickly, because Don, you have nothing to apologize for. In fact, I know exactly who's well, one of the most responsible people for where we are right now. The fact that he's related to me is irrelevant. And I think you and I are very much on the same page. We get nowhere if we pull punches. So please feel free to say whatever you need to say here.
Let me swing. We've ceded morality to a man who made, who is 26 or 27 credible accusations of sexual assault, who's bragged about sexually accosting women, who's paid off porn stars in terms of hush money. And we saw why the Christian right supported him and stayed with him recently, with the Supreme Court in Roe versus Wade. But we can no longer afford to cede both patriotism and morality to the right when we see them doing unpatriotic and immoral things. And I think that the messaging issue is kind of twofold, if I may. One, we need to be more positive about what we do right and what's good, and get out there and say it and say it and say it and get that message out. Lowest unemployment in the last half century, for instance, would be a message that we need to get out. But also, I can tell you as a student of military history, which my graduate degree's in, that the best defense is a counterattack. And so that's the second part of messaging, is that when these scurrilous lies and these accusations come in, as they did with State Senator McMorrow, for instance, we need not only to defend, we need to counterattack. And we need to do it with short, sharp punches. Yeah.
Don, there's so much there, because we've seen over time, you could argue from the time Donald was running to be the candidate for the Republican nomination in 2016, where anything he did, any line he crossed, was shrugged off or normalized, especially as he got closer to the nomination, and certainly after he got the nomination. So we could have foreseen that since he got away with the Access Hollywood tape, that nothing else was going to stick. In fact, I think his approval ratings on the right went up. So there's that problem, and I think what we see happening now, as you alluded to, with Roe v. Wade and these horrific state laws, which I'd like to talk about a little later, just shows the depths of the misogyny in this country. And then there's the left, a lot of people on the left who seem incapable of fighting back. And it's sort of like, well, they're calling us pedophiles, but we don't want to go there, so we're just going to let it slide. How do we convince them that they need to be more like Mallory McMorrow if they're in office?
Yeah. Listen, I think there's a growing appetite out there to do that, but it's going to require, frankly, people like me and other people who are willing to go into the alley. I think I put a tweet out a while ago that said, when they go low, I'll be there waiting. With all due respect for the people whom I love, who said, when they go low, we'll go high. We're not in that world anymore. We are not in that world anymore. We're in a world where the lowest leverage wins. And, we have to stop bringing spoons to a knife fight.
It's funny because I never thought we go high meant, roll over and die. I thought it meant just don't be like them. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Don't be racist and misogynistic. But get your brass knuckles, get your black belt in Taekwondo, whatever it is, and fight back 10 times as hard, because what we're fighting for is actually the good stuff, right?
No, that's right. That's right. Which is, again, why we can't cede morality and patriotism. Look, these people are bullies. You know this better than anybody. They are
Yeah.
classic schoolyard bullies. Very, very, very tough until someone punches them in the nose. And then what do? They always go running to teacher, sobbing. Oh, the media's been mean to me. Don Winslow said something nasty about me. Boo hoo 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 hoo. Good. Good. We need to punch him in the nose again and again and again. And what we ought to be doing, is punching him in the nose on national television with the January 6th committee. Why, Mary? And I'm sorry, I'm going to go on a rant. You should
No,
stop me.
please. In fact, that's where I wanted you to go.
Why?
So please rant
Why?
away.
Why are we issuing invitations? Invitations? What is this? Your cousin's 8th grade graduation ceremony? Your grandmother's 90th birthday? Invitations? Why aren't we issuing subpoenas? Why aren't we subpoenaing, if that's a verb, these people, make them go in front of the committee under penalty of perjury? And then, if they want to take the fifth on television in front of the nation, let's all watch them do it. And that would change some minds. I'm old enough, to remember Watergate, right?
Yep.
I was very young, but I'm old enough to remember Watergate. That changed minds. That country was Nixon's country when those Watergate hearings started. And that,
Yeah.
compared to January 6th, was a misdemeanor compared to felony murder.
That's right.
They tried nothing less than to overthrow the democratically elected government of the United States. They tried nothing less than to stage a coup. And we're issuing invitations. I put out a list today of 25, 26 people who we're not going to see testify,
Yeah, I saw
i.e.,
that.
all the major players. Somebody said to me last night, well, they've been prosecuting the Proud Boys, and he said, great. So we're going to get the foot soldiers, right?
Yeah. I have a question about that, though. And don't get me wrong. I agree with you. I don't understand why there aren't hearings every day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why there aren't subpoenas. I don't understand why these things aren't advertised more broadly. For example, a few months ago, I asked on Twitter, why isn't there a committee to investigate what happened with COVID? Because, I think
Right.
Donald's a mass murderer. And somebody responded, oh, there is. Like, I didn't know. And I'm pretty up to date on what's happening in the world.
You're pretty in the swing.
So if Republicans got back into power, they would bring back Benghazi, for God's sakes.
Listen, how many hours did Hillary Clinton have to sit there testifying about Benghazi? 11 hours.
Without complaint.
11 hours. Who have we seen testify for a minute? We've had courtesy meetings. Mm-hmm. Mary, what's a courtesy meeting? What is that? I don't even know what that is.
I think it's when somebody lies to you without penalty of perjury.
Yeah, exactly. We have a courtesy meeting. You can tell me whatever you want to tell me. And by the way, we're not going to publicize it.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. If the Republicans come back in power in the midterms, that's what you're going to see. Benghazi back, Hunter Biden. You're going to see an impeachment movement against President Biden.
And Vice President Harris, and they'll get rid of the filibuster 30 seconds after the votes have been counted.
Yep.
Or not counted, because they may not need to count the votes.
Because what do votes matter anymore? So
you on Twitter are incredibly hard on Democrats, understandably. And, I've sort of taken this position that in terms of policy, not totally across the board, but generally speaking, in terms of policy, I'm not criticizing, because imagine how bad things would be if, Biden had lost. It would just be unimaginable, actually. So when it comes to strategy, however, I think we really, really do need to take them to task, because the media are biased against democracy, which is something I never thought would be true, or that I would have to say. And the Democrats, I don't know, they continue to fail to recognize that their colleagues are fascists now and
Yeah.
can't be dealt with in a polite manner.
Right.
So, do you think that the January, and I know this is speculation, but I like you, I've been racking my brain trying to figure out what is going on here. Do
Mhm.
you think that they're just banking on the fact that these televised hearings will be so compelling that it doesn't really matter if the big players testify because they have the goods on them?
Well, if they're banking on that, it's a bad investment. You know, it's to steal a line from a film. It's like staging Hamlet without Hamlet. What's the
Yeah.
point? I guess you get Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, but I don't think that these hearings will be compelling unless we see the major culprits, testify. In Watergate, we saw John Mitchell testify, and by the way, he went to prison because of his perjury. But again, without bringing those people on, and I know I'm repeating myself, but it bears repeating, sorry, without bringing those people on and making them testify under oath, and then let them perjure themselves, and then let there be consequences for perjury, or let them come out and tell the truth and let the country see what went on and who was involved, or let them take the fifth. Now, everybody has a constitutional right not to incriminate themselves. I'm not arguing against that. But let the country see people say, no, I'm not going to answer that because it might tend to incriminate me. No, I'm not going to answer that because it might tend to incriminate me. And let
Right.
people draw their own conclusions.
And because this is not a criminal issue at the moment, it's civil
At the
issue and
moment,
it's dealt with in the Senate. Not, saying that,
oh,
I can't remember the term, but when people plead the fifth so they don't incriminate themselves, that can be construed as an admission in some ways. It could be held
yes,
against
yeah,
them. But
yes, and
we
perjury would be a criminal matter in testimony to the Senate.
right, but I think we would need Merrick Garland for that. So one thing that Donald, and I don't like giving him credit for much because I think his enablers have created this situation
Mm-hmm,
to a much greater degree than he has. However, he's taught them a bunch of things. You mentioned it earlier, the grievance,
mm-hmm,
the lying with impunity. But the other thing he's become expert at over decades now is running out the clock.
right,
So we've seen with Steve Bannon and Mark Meadows that they didn't show up. It seems
right,
there's no mechanism to force somebody to. And this is months and months and months ago, and there has been no action by the
right.
DOJ in
Because it
terms of
took
Mark Meadows.
it took 6 months to form that committee.
Yeah.
6 months. After the John Kennedy assassination, it took a week. After Pearl Harbor, it took a few weeks. They gave them a 6 month grace period on that clock that's running out. And now it's been, what, 16 months, maybe a little bit more, still no subpoenas, still no testimony. So, of course, the clock's going to run out.
And Don, one of the things that we're learning now is that at least for a few days after January 6th, Republican leadership was deeply concerned
Right.
about holding Donald accountable. They were talking about the 25th Amendment. That would have been the time to strike when there was some consensus. And it seems that the fact that the country didn't grind to a halt after
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
um, the fact that so much that Donald has been impeached twice and is still the leader of the Republican Party and is still
Right.
allegedly, if he runs, going to get the Republican nomination. I think it points to the fact that our institutions are, if not damaged beyond repair, then in need of serious overhaul. So we're fighting with another hand tied behind our back because our institutions aren't working either.
Yeah, they don't seem to be, but we need to invigorate them. Look, I think that there needs to be great pressure from the bottom up. which is why we need to get that message out, which is why we need to get people fired up, get people angry, use tough language, use harsh language, frankly, to say, are you asleep? Wake up. What's it going to take? How close did we come on that day to losing our democracy? What would have happened if that one guard hadn't led those people up those stairs? What might have happened? What would have happened if Nancy
Yeah.
Pelosi had been in her office?
Right. Or if
What
they'd
would have
gotten to Mike
happened?
Pence.
That was my next statement. What would have
Mhm.
happened if they'd gotten to Mike Pence? What would have happened if Mike Pence had gotten in the car that Donald offered him? And so
Yeah.
that's why this story needs to get out. It needs to be on national television. It needs to have people clicking on it every day, like they would some celebrity trial, But listen, I think the country's tired. I
Yeah.
understand that. I think after the chaos of the Trump administration, which was, just different chaos every day, after COVID, which, was incredibly anxious and a lot of people still grieving, you know, and exhausted. I think the country is mentally and emotionally worn out. And so January 6th happened, and then we all kind of went, oh, here's more COVID. We're all locked up in our little rooms. And that time period, that very critical time period that you alluded to, slipped. But we can't be so tired, we can't be so mentally and emotionally fatigued that we're going to let our democracy be taken over by a bunch of thugs. And I completely agree with you, fascists. You know, years ago, before the 2016 election, I was saying these people are fascist, and people called me an alarmist and a fantasist and a radical. I was not happy to be proven right, by the way. And I'd love to be
No, it's
proven wrong about the January 6th committee and the DOJ. I would love to be wrong, but I haven't seen any evidence so far that would tell me that I'm wrong.
yeah, I think you're one of the people on Twitter who's been saying, the alarmists weren't really alarmists, were they? Because we were right about all of this shit that we saw coming down the pike.
Yeah,
And it's, as you said, as then, now, the hits just keep on coming. We're still
hmm
dealing with COVID, now with Roe v. Wade. And it seems every day a more horrifying anti-human statute is being enacted in another red state. So it is difficult to hang
yeah,
on to the thread. And one of the reasons I think your approach is so valuable is because it is going to take an overarching narrative to help people hang on to why they're fighting, because the media won't do it. It took the media 3 years to call Donald a liar and
right.
something like 40,000 lies. I
Yep,
don't know that they ever openly called him a racist, even though he's been one since he was a child. And they're never going to use the word fascist. And it says a lot about where we are right now and how confused people probably are when inflation gets more play in the news than the
right,
fact that the wife of a sitting Supreme Court justice is a
right.
traitor to this country.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the word traitor because that was my next point. We talk about liar, we talk about racist. Absolutely true, absolutely important. Here's another word that we should be using, and not only in relationship to Donald Trump, but in relationship to Josh Hawley, Rudy Giuliani, Ted Cruz, et al., et al., et al. Traitor. Traitor. Those people are traitors. And how much investigation do you need, Mary? It's axiomatic in trials that you need motive, means, and opportunity. That's not true. If you have a video of somebody robbing a bank and you can identify that person on that video, you don't need motive. You don't need to ask, why did he rob the bank? You have him on video robbing the bank. You automatically have means and opportunity. So what do we have? We have an hour's worth of tape of Donald Trump trying to suborn votes in Georgia. What's the state of Georgia doing about that? I really want to see,
I
right?
think the grand jury is going to be impaneled sometime soon.
Sometime. Okay, sometime. We have video of Donald Trump et al., Latin and others, urging a violent mob to march to storm the Capitol to overturn the election. He even said, "I'll walk with you." Of course, he didn't. Maybe it was bone spurs. I don't know
There
what
was no
prevented
golf court of it. Cart of
that
it.
particular hike. You know, what more do you need? What more do you need? Listen, I'm all in favor of investigating it top to bottom, but we
Mhm.
all saw it. We all heard
That's
it.
one of the things that's so demoralizing. I get it. You go for the king, you best not miss. Okay, fine. But we all know, just as we all know that 70% of the people in this country support Roe v. Wade in some form or another.
Right.
70%. This country is a liberal democracy, at least in terms of what the people want, but it's
Sure.
certainly not being governed that way because of um
Listen,
the go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. I interrupted you, please.
No, no, not at all. I'm just going to say because of the tyranny of the minority, the fact that this is not a democracy, the Senate is not a democracy, and the Supreme Court is openly anti-democratic at this point.
It is. Look, if we all vote and all the votes get counted, we win. It's a liberal
Right.
democracy. And listen, we should never lose track of the fact that we did win in the last
Right.
election by 7
Right.
million votes. I'm on the road right now. I'm on tour right now. I see groups of people every night. And a lot of them talk about their despair and their anxiety. And I say, I agree with it. I understand these are tough times. We need to fight. We need to buckle down. But let's not lose track of the fact that we won. Someone said to me the other night, how much worse could it be? And I said, well, if Donald Trump were president, we'd see how much worse it could be. It
That's
would
right.
be a lot worse than it is now. I'm not being Pollyanna. You know my feelings about this. You know what I think about what should be done or what needs to be done and how fearful it is. But let's not lose track of the fact that if we all vote and those votes get counted, we win.
Right. Well, despair is a luxury we do not have for sure. And we do need to help people. You know what's weird? It always feels like when the Republicans are in the majority, they get everything they want. And when
Mhm.
the Republicans are in the minority, they get everything they want.
Yeah.
The Democrats never, ever are able to put their stamp on things. They're never able to get their agenda passed in the way they want. I know the margins are small,
Mhm.
but it always feels like, despite those polls showing 70% in want gun safety regulations, choice, et cetera, et cetera, it always feels like we're in a 50-50 country, which can't possibly be true. And yet, I think that is how a lot of people are feeling. And they are a little bit despairing because in order for us to win, we have to outvote them by enormous numbers,
Yeah.
which explains, I'm guessing, why they're so desperate to put in place extreme gerrymanders and enact
Right.
voter
And
suppression.
they have been putting it in place. And that's
Yep.
another reason that democracy is in danger, you know. But we need to enliven Democrats. We need to make Democrats furious about what's going on, But I see more and more of it out there. I have to tell you, I do. You know, um,
Yeah, and honestly, we have so much to be righteously angry about. This is not,
mhm,
um, we're not making anything up. Our rights are at stake, our country is at stake, and the Republicans who lie about everything, who have nothing to offer, really do seem to own the narrative. Like their voter fraud lie
mhm,
is really compelling to people, to the point that they're starting to engage in voter subversion, which is
right,
basically not accepting the results of election if a Democrat wins,
right,
and
yeah.
even more dangerous, convincing Americans that the elections aren't legitimate at all. So how do we counter that? Because that's a
Well, you
huge piece.
listen. I mean, the thing in fascists have always been great at it, right?
Yeah.
Is they tell the big lie over and over and over and over again. and they tell it in simple, plain language. We need to do the same with the truth. We need to tell it in simple, plain language over and over and over again. We need to do it on social media, right? And not just, on Sunday morning, political talk shows, um, and say it over and over and over again. And then we also need to use plain language about what the other side says. Not, well, I see it a little differently, or that's not exactly accurate, or another way of looking at it is. We need to say, that's a lie. We need to say, you're a liar.
Yeah, I have another episode on Tuesdays called the Strategy Sessions, and I have
Mm-hmm.
a panel. And maybe one day when you're done with this crazy book tour you're on, like you're all over the place, you'll join us. And one at the very end, my charge to my guests is come up with a bumper sticker, come up
Mm-hmm.
with a message that can fit on a bumper sticker, because that's what they do incredibly well. They co-opt our language, for God's sakes.
Yeah, that's right.
They're calling the leak of Alito's horrific opinion an insurrection. They
Yeah,
say my body, my choice when they're asked to wear a mask or get a vaccine.
right.
So, but the difference, I think, is
Right.
that
But when children are mowed down at Sandy Hook, we do nothing about that. Those lives apparently aren't sacred.
and
You
that's the
know.
thing. They have their side. The Republican leaders, so called,
Yeah.
use fear, and it's very compelling. And I think fear actually, at the stage we're in right now, the end stage of democracy, I think fear is more compelling than hope for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
we
Sure.
need, right? So how about rage?
Yeah. How about sustained anger? I
Yes.
think one thing that Democrats are not very good at is sustained anger, sustained rage. We get mad for an hour or two, right? And then we let it go. The Republicans get mad for 50 years,
Right.
right?
That's right.
So we need that sustained rage. And January 6th would be a perfect thing to have sustained rage about. The treatment of women in this country, because so much of these efforts is all about making women suffer, frankly, is, you mentioned the misogyny earlier of it, would be a good place for sustained rage. Listen, I'm still furious about January 6th. I watch those
Yep.
events, my blood boiling, right? I'm still mad about it, still angry about it. And not to hold myself up as an example, but we need more of that.
We
We
do.
need to get angry and stay angry. And then people say, well, aren't you contributing to the polarization of America? Well, look, right and wrong are polar opposites.
That's right.
Democracy
Right.
and dictatorship are polar opposites.
Exactly.
You know?
When people talk about polarization and isn't that a bad thing? Like, I'm not making common cause with fascists, because that is to cede the ground of democracy to them, and we cannot do that. But we do need to figure out um, a way to help people sustain their anger without becoming demoralized. And I've said this many times. One of the disadvantages we've been at is that the media have treated the Biden administration as a normal administration that followed another normal
Right.
administration,
Not,
when nothing could be further from the truth.
nothing could be
So,
further from the truth.
right?
I mean,
So
look
it
at the
feels like we need to
inauguration.
recalibrate that as well.
Right. The inauguration was a fortified event because of what had occurred, a couple of weeks previously, right? President Biden is a fundamentally decent man, fundamentally decent person, followed a fundamentally indecent person,
Yes.
right? And so, we have to take that into account, what the situation was when they came into office. We absolutely do. I think in terms of sustained anger being demoralizing, sure, it can be that, it can be enervating, right? You can just get exhausted.
Yeah.
But you can also become energized. It's not an either or, it's not a binary choice. You know, I've been telling
Yeah.
people, on these events, sure, feel bad for an hour or two, feel anxious, feel exhausted for a couple of hours, and then get up and do the next necessary thing. And what are those necessary things? Well, if you have the resources, it's donating to the candidates that you support. If you don't, it's getting out there and voting. Maybe it's driving someone to the polls. It's getting on social media and expressing your opinion loudly and without embarrassment, without apology. You know, there are a lot of next necessary things. And so sometimes, life is a matter of putting one foot in front of the other, you know, to not want to
Yeah.
do it anyway. And
Yeah, I
and
think
without
we
being
do have to.
sententious.
Right. We need to look at this as a relay race.
Hmm.
It's definitely not a sprint, although we are running out of time. And it's not a marathon because it's not us alone. And sometimes we need to hand off the baton. So as you
Yeah.
said, we can sort of regroup. But that way there's always somebody on the field.
Right,
And
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
We need to look at this as a team effort. And I think that's why people respond so strongly and positively to your videos, because it makes them feel part of something. You know,
Hmm.
you're drawing people in to an explanation of things that nobody else is providing, or very few people are providing for them. Uh, is that the response you've been getting from
Yes.
people?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is very much so, and I put out a call to form a digital army. Exactly what you're talking about. Strength in numbers to be able to have rapid response teams that when these scurrilous lies come out, you respond to them quickly, you shoot them down quickly, and importantly, you counterattack the people who put them out. There has to be a cost to playing poker here. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Every boxer I've ever seen looks good against a punching bag,
That's so true.
right? But when the
Yeah.
punches start coming back, most of the boxers don't look so good. You know,
Right.
that's mixing metaphors. There has to be a cost. You know, there has to be a cost, and that cost has to hurt. Um, and then you'll start seeing these lies and things back down, right? I was so heartened by State Senator McMorrow's response to the lies against her. I was cheering, stand up and call it what it is. That's a lie. You're a liar. And what happened?
Yeah.
They backed off because bullies always do.
Right.
And when is the last time you saw a bully go up against two people standing side by side?
Well, exactly. And
You
done. I
haven't,
think
because it almost never happens.
it never
So,
happens. And one of the reasons Senator McMorrow's video went viral and people responded to the way it did, we're starving. We're
mhm.
starving for leadership like that. And I don't know if you saw this article, but this her floor speech was just a few days after Representatives Eric Swalwell and Hakeem Jeffries, both of whom I have a great deal of respect for, basically were like, no, we're not responding to the pedophile stuff. I mean, we're not going to go there. We're going to focus on all the good the Democrats are doing. Oh my God. So basically, you're totally cool with letting them call you the worst thing you can call another human being.
But listen, why is that a choice? Why can't you
Right.
do both? Are you that
Exactly.
busy? Why can't you say, here's all the good stuff we've done. Now let's address this pedophile thing. Those are dirty lies, and those people are dirty liars.
That's right.
And unless you come in and show me some proof of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm
And
I'm calling you out on it. We've listened. We've allowed QAnon to say that there was a child sex trafficking ring in the basement of a restaurant that has no basement. The lie is a lie literally from the bottom up, literally from the foundation up. Uh, we have to strike back, and to get back to the bully point. If two people stand side by side, the bully's not going to attack. What if it's 2,000? What if it's 2
right.
million? What if it's 20 million? And
Absolutely.
that's what we need to be doing. That's what we need to be organizing for. To say,
And
look, you cannot control the narrative anymore without us answering back.
that's the lesson, right? In 2016, while there were 700 Republicans running for the presidential nomination,
Right.
actually it was 17. If
17.
one of those people
Yes.
had walked across the stage and punched Donald in the face, which he deserved,
Yep.
just kidding, NSA. No, I'm not. It would have been over. It would have been
Metaphorically
game.
punching him in the face.
Yes, metaphorically. Exactly. And just stood toe to toe with him and called him whatever name they needed to call him. It would have been over. We need to learn that lesson.
Yeah, I said that. That's so funny you said that. Watching those debates, I said that 100 times watching them. There was a moment in one of the Bush-Obama debates, one of the Obama debates, when, he crossed the stage and Obama stood there, just stood there,
Oh,
didn't
wow. I
back.
remember that.
And
Was
that ended any kind of, attempted bullying,
right.
But
Yeah.
you're quite right. But I kept waiting for Romney to do it. I kept waiting for Bush to do it. Cruz isn't going to do it.
No.
As coward as anybody. But yeah, it was remarkable. But we need to do it.
We do. And just a quick aside, I don't know if it's that important necessarily, but I hope someday we'll find out the answer to this question, or the answer to why it played out this way. Did it surprise you that the Republican Party, to a person, went along with all of this? Not just Donald and his sexual assault and his ignorance and his cruelty, but the big lie and the fact that January 6th isn't a big deal. Did that
Yeah.
surprise you at all?
Well, at what point in time? Do you know what I mean? At first,
Right.
it surprised me. Yes,
In real time, I guess.
Yeah, because I thought that there were still patriots among the Republicans. I thought that maybe there was a line that they would not cross, i.e., a violent insurrection that threatened to kill them as well.
Yeah.
Now, nothing they do or don't do would surprise me. That party has totally compromised itself. The shame will never wash off of it. I said on Twitter, and I mean it still, I will not vote for a Republican for any office for any reason for as long as I live. If Abraham Lincoln came back tomorrow and ran for dog catcher of my town as a Republican, I would not vote for him.
Right. The only exception I might make is for Evan McMullin if I lived in Utah.
If you lived in Utah, yeah, maybe. But listen, that the Republican Party's gone stark raving mad, and even that's letting them off easily. I think that the sheer cowardice, the cravenness of those
is
people
the word.
is such a disgrace. I don't know how you pass by a mirror. I really don't, and look at it and think of what you've done and what you haven't done.
I bet most of them don't have a reflection, but that's just my
maybe not. But the Marco Rubios, the Ted Cruzes. Listen, Josh Hawley, why is he asking questions of a judge and not answering questions to a judge?
That's right.
That's
right.
Why didn't the Senate throw him out? And,
I'm right there with you.
There are a bunch of other names,
There are at least 10 in the Senate, and over 120 in the House. Don, I think what you're getting at is the truth that we all now have to face, is that our system is very, very weak, and it doesn't allow for taking strong action against even the most awful players, right? The Hawleys and the Cruzes. And it allows one man, being Mitch McConnell, the greatest traitor to this country since Robert E. Lee, to have so much power that he literally changed the course of where this country is headed with what he did with the federal judiciary and the Supreme Court.
Absolutely. But that is why the grassroots movement the groundswell is so important. It is not going to come from the top down. It's not.
Right.
But enough pressure from the bottom up, where some of these people think that they might lose their offices, they might lose their jobs. There's enough pressure coming from enough people that, and only that, is when we'll see change in this regard. That's the bad news. The good news is we do have the numbers if the numbers would mobilize.
Right. And that's what you're doing. You have said that you're funding this initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering though, is there a way that people can, or let me rephrase, what are specific ways people can help you and this incredible initiative that you're
Yeah.
running with in order to save
Hit us up on
our
Twitter,
country?
#Winslow Digital Army. And as soon as I get off this merry-go-round, we will be getting in touch with people, but we want people speaking out on social media. We want to form rapid response teams. We're creating alliances with people from all over, the sphere, from the entertainment sphere, from the political sphere, from, thank God, just, working people in this country to try to create this groundswell. So we'll be in touch. I'll be in touch with them.
It is such a brilliant idea, and following your advice that we start taking back words and concepts from the Republicans, because they are this Republican Party is the most anti-democratic, anti-patriotic, treasonous, traitorous,
Yes,
amoral, immoral bunch of blackguards I've ever encountered in my life. So what I want to say is thank you for being such a great patriot. It's been an honor just getting to know you, even though it's only been on Twitter so far. But to meet you,
we'll meet up sometime.
to see your work and how it's grown and influence, and obviously, if there's anything I can do, I will meet you at the bottom along with the Republicans.
We'll see you in the alley, Mary. Okay, side by side. We're there. No,
brass
and thank
knuckles.
you. Brass knuckles, if that's what's necessary. Again, we're speaking metaphorically. I would never advocate
indeed.
violence.
Never.
But yeah, listen. I do the Twitter. Shane and I do the videos together. My buddy and partner in crime, Shane Salerno, is brilliant at this with these videos, and we're forming this army. So welcome.
All right. Well, Don Winslow, the brilliant writer whose City on Fire just came out on the New York Times bestseller list. It's selling like hotcakes around the world. And it's actually the 22nd book you've written. So there are lots of other great Don Winslow books to read, and 2 more coming. But setting that aside to do everything you can to help Democrats win the midterms and thereby save the future of America. Don Winslow, thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. And thank you very much for having me. And thank you for everything you do and your support.
Okay. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of The Mary Trump Show. And thank you to my amazing guest, Don Winslow. He's got so many great ideas, and his pro-democracy initiative is something everybody needs to pay attention to. So that's it for tonight. Please come back next Tuesday for the Mary Trump Show strategy sessions, which are at youtube.com/Politicon at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And our Thursday show, also at youtube.com/Politicon, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Follow Politicon on YouTube. Please like the episode, and don't forget to click on the bell, because that way you will be sure to be notified every time a new episode drops. You can also listen to the show on Apple or anywhere you get your podcasts, and give the show a 5-star review because it really does help people find the show. Again, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you guys. In the meantime, please stay safe and be kind.